Okay, still doing some digital line work. I'm moving up to the top half. And you can see these are two separate pieces. So if I select them both, there we go. The blob brush should help me join them. Oh, but it let go of it. So let me see. So now it's all joined because they were both created with the blob brush. So when you use it again, it will put them together. And then I can connect them with the pencil tool and shape them. Try to make it pretty clean. Not too thin. Just making a mess of it. It's getting there. I think my enemy is these thin lines. I really subscribe to the thick outline rule of design. Don't try to be too delicate. But it does show you how important your line weight is. Now, a little wobble like that, in the scheme of things on an illustration, is not a big deal. Especially as you zoom out and it's printed on a t-shirt or whatever. But if that were a logo design, that would be disastrous. So that's where Illustrator is mostly used, when you need just really tight control. And in Photoshop, you wouldn't think twice about having a little wobble in a line. You wouldn't even be able to recognize it. But in Illustrator, they make all those things really, really obvious with the anchor points. And then you do your best to clean them up. But because this isn't a logo or a corporate identity you're getting paid thousands and thousands of dollars for, you just want it to be fun and to match your intentions and not drive you nuts. And my worry is if I use the smooth tool, it will get rid of my sharp point there. But I'm going to try it. And good, it didn't. Now that I can live with. I can work with that. Good. And it's taken me a while of working with Illustrator to know that my favorite tool is this pencil tool. And to know what settings, kind of work best for me, when to use smooth. And there's no substitute for just working with it and finding your own way of kind of capitalizing on the advantages of the program. But in this course, the goal is to introduce you to it, try to make you a little less intimidated. It's all very doable. You always have Command-Z in Illustrator to fall back. Now the shortcut to get to the pencil tool from whatever tool you're in is just the In button. And once you find lots of tools that you tend to use a lot, you'll probably learn those shortcuts as well. And that can be very helpful in saving you time. All right, this is a time when I'm going to need to use the Pathfinder because they weren't all created with the blob brush. I hold down Shift to select the multiple overlaying paths and I merge them. And now they're all one, which allows me to then carve them. So when I was first using Illustrator for jobs, they didn't have the blob brush tool. It was very difficult to merge things, and I would often just overlap shapes. But in printing, that can actually cause problems, because even though it looks like it's solid black, in printing it will print as what's called a 100% gray, which is just 100% cyan, 100% yellow, and 100% magenta. And when you overlap that, it goes darker than when it's not overlapped. So even though it looks perfect on the screen, you would see those overlaps in a print job, which for a t-shirt doesn't matter so much, but for a logo matters a whole lot. So the Pathfinder is a way more important tool than is obvious from the way it's designed into the architecture of the program. Because for professional quality work, you really do need to join everything and not have a lot of shapes just floating on top of each other. There's very little you can get away with in printing, in professional printing. It's because it's such a mechanical process. And we're going to learn a little bit about those mechanics in assignment 8 as we learn the old school way of making these print ready, or 4-color lithography press. Why did I have to do so many curves in this design? All right, so this is really annoying me, so I'm just going to get rid of all these anchor points and use the Bezier curves as they're designed. You just have one of them. Whoops. And you can set the curve that way. And then it's nice and even. You can even make it lopsided if you want. So it gives you perfect control. You decide how much you want to use. Takes a lot of time and effort to be a control freak. All right, so that's going to do it. Plays with thick and thin, plays with a lot of different dynamics, kind of makes that space more energetic. So now I go back to my layers. I have that all as one group, which makes it really easy to select it, copy it, make a new layer, lock the old layer, paste it in place, and then go to Object, Transform, Reflect on a vertical axis at 90 degrees, then hold down Shift, and move the whole thing. Come on. Transform, reflect. Just move the whole thing over to lock onto my guide, and then I'll have a perfect match side to side. And then the only thing I really need my sketch for anymore is the interior of the bird and the crown. So I'm getting there. Now I'm using the arrow keys, which kind of nudge it. But then I'll need to get in with just the large selection tool and get it right on top. Right there. So it all seams together. And you even want it to overlap just slightly. And then if I need to, I can use the Pathfinder and merge it all into one. And that is what I'm going to do. All right, so I've got my interior line. Turn off the sketch for a moment just so you can see it. So that's my illustration thus far. I have the tail overlapping it here with a white stroke. But I'll deal with that soon enough. Let's turn off the bird right now. So now that I've done this interior line, I like it, and I might revisit this outline here and maybe make it a little bit thicker, maybe make it a little less uniform, and maybe even play with the shape of it. Kind of round out those corners a little bit. Yeah, well, no, the variation doesn't quite work. Let's see. You can actually do decimals too for your point size. Yeah, that will work well. Okay, now I'm going to merge these two paths together. So I'm going to unlock the two sides. Select all of them, holding down Shift. All selected. There we go. And then use the Pathfinder to merge them. And now they're all one. It's a beautiful thing. Save my progress. That was a lot of work. Very different than when I was trying to figure out a logo solution. Okay, now the bird. And all those dividing lines. Oh my goodness. So I already have a filled in bird. So I can easily take that asset, copy it, paste it onto a new layer. Here, I'll put it into a layer that's now empty. There's no reason to delete old elements when you can just make duplicates of them. Lock everything else. And now I'll just change the quality of it. So I don't want it to be a fill anymore. Let's try it as a stroke. There we go. And I want the inside to not be filled. So instead of it being filled with white, not be filled at all. And now I'm going to undo the tail. I'm just going to get rid of the tail. So it just complicates my design. So I'll use the pencil tool. I'll just pretend that tail never existed. Now I do want to keep, just personally, I do want to keep the slight asymmetry in the bird, right? Because I'm going to show the directionality of it with my internal lines. But the symmetry of the outside is really going to help cement it. Okay, now before I do the internal designs of the bird and the crown, I want to do all of these lines here. And the first one should be on the seam, so I can turn my guide back on. I go to yet another layer, lock my others, and I'm going to draw with just the brush tool. So I want these to each be separate. And you can set the paintbrush tool just like you do the pencil tool, except you get to choose a width. So I'm going to choose a fairly regular width. Draw a line down. Try to keep them, I want them to look hand done, which is why I'm not using just a stroke tool and a line. I'm trying to be pretty clean with them. Not succeeding too well. There we go.